get around the Christmas tree.
Hi, Sammy. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. And you? Is the connection better?
Boring. Sorry, darling.
Is the connection better?
I've just accidentally eaten half a jar of chocolate spread.
That was no accident. Okay, good boy. Good lad. Didn't catch that bit.
I don't even know. It was completely unplanned. I've got no idea why it was even in the cupboard.
Oh, well, it could have been worse. It could be two that you've eaten.
Yeah, it was only half a jar. It could have been worse.
Sorry.
Don't worry.
We're back.
You're exactly on time. You landed at exactly 6 o'clock. You couldn't have done better if you tried. So you're all on mute. What we'll do first of all, I can't remember, Sammy, did you join us last week for this session? Yeah, okay. I don't need to introduce you again then. Not this time. So before we get started, what we'll do is a little review on how you think you've done this week and how it's going, and any problems that you want me to help you with, see if we can tackle. So we'll start with Nikki. You've been feeding that puppy. That puppy is massive. So if you just unmute yourself for me.
Yeah. Yeah, she's 10 and a, no, she's not, she's 11.5 kilos now.
Wow.
Plenty of exercise, free running. Like, we don't do, the only thing we haven't started doing is much on the leads, but she's only just had her jabs, really. But yeah, training wise, you follow quite well, don't you? Autumn? Do you touch? No? What's that? So settle, she's really good at settle, because, and that's, it wasn't until I spoke to my other half last week, because she was asleep to begin with. And that's what he said, because she's so used to just curling up at my feet when I'm on the laptop. So it's almost like she's, there you go, what's that? You gonna say hello? She's, the laptop's on the table that she does her grooming on, or has her groomers on. So, but yeah, no, she's pretty good. She's getting to that, almost a mind of her own a bit now. Not quite as biddable as she was, but she's 14 weeks, so I guess we should expect that a bit. And obviously she's got the 4 big dogs, so she follows their lead a bit, which isn't always a good thing. The only thing she has started to do this week is jump up quite a bit, just out of excitement. So what we've started doing, and on recalls, when she comes back, she wants to leap into your arms. So I've started throwing treats at my feet when she comes back. So she almost does an emergency stop for the treats, which seems to seems to help. And it's just trying to, you know, get other people to stay off and not down when she jumps up or walk away, that sort of thing. But it's when they're all leaping up, it's hard to remember what word you're supposed to use. And the automatic thing I think everybody says is down, and it's kind of, we're trying to use off so she's not getting confused with when it comes further down the road, really.
Okay, sounds pretty good though in general. I mean, yes, teenagehood or adolescence, if you like, can start as early as sort of 16 weeks. So it sounds like you might be on track for, you know, starting to have a feel that she's finding her feet. And for some dogs, it can be a really slow process, right from start to finish. Jumping up, perfect. You know, if your dog's expecting the reward and the reinforcement to be on the floor, that's where they're going to aim to keep their feet. So that's a spot on way of preventing it in the first place. And it's also a really good way of getting rid of it. And we could play a little game. I could show you a little game that you play to help your puppy understand that jumping up isn't effective. What I would say about jumping up in puppies is it's not always about excitement. It can be a sign of anxiety or stress if they're not coping with the situation. They're trying to get to your face because they want to give submissive licking to the face, which is, you know, a hangover from their genetic inheritance. It's what they do with other dogs if they're trying to, you know, be apologetic or whatever. So sometimes what we definitely don't want to be doing is we don't want to be telling them off, because if there is already a level of anxiety for whatever reason, and then we start getting beaten up on them and getting angry with them, then that can just make that anxiety worse. And so, yeah, lots of reinforcement. And yeah, I mean, you can't control every human being that comes into your home. I tend, when I've got a puppy, if I've got somebody coming in that's really messing up my training, then I don't let them have access to the puppy. You know, if I've got anybody in the house who's absolutely determined they want to do it their own way, well, they, you know, they're not allowed access. And it's my dog. I'm going to grow it to understand me. And if you want to play with my dog and be involved with my dog, you need to do it the way I'm doing it. And I know that's hard inside families, very hard. The other thing I would say is that your dog can learn to understand the cues from you, and be good for you, and still be really awful when they're with somebody else. So, you know, what I tend to say to my clients who have problems with family members who just won't toe the line, I said, well, carry on doing what you're doing. Eventually they're going to see that the dog's really good for you, and they're going to start wanting to know how to do it. So they'll start copying. Nagging and punishing doesn't work any better with human beings than it does with dogs, to be honest. So I think it's a bit of prevention, the same as it is with a puppy. Don't let them have access, and reward them when you see them doing it right, rather than getting on at them and punishing them for doing it wrong. But humans, you know, not easy people. All right then, Claire, are you ready? I'll just mute Nikki and I'll get you to unmute yourself.
So Georgie's been doing really well again. We're having problems with her jumping up. When I'm preparing her food, she jumps up and she just goes crazy. And as well, trying to steal things off the kitchen side is becoming a bit of a problem. But yeah, she's doing really well on her walks, and her recall's really good. And she's just had her dad come home, so she's just getting excited. But yeah, she's doing really well.
Okay. So fantastic. Just mute you again. So jumping up at the sides and jumping up when you're prepping food, I mean, that just makes sense, doesn't it? If you put yourself inside the head of the dog, there is the food, and if I can do something to access it, then that makes sense to do that more, doesn't it? So what we have to be very aware of, if we've got a puppy who has figured out that there's good stuff on the work surfaces is we need to make sure that it's never going to work, because it only needs to work a couple of times, you know, a month for the dog to figure out it's worth trying. And no amount of us, you know, telling them off is going to make it effective, because all they then learn is there's food on the work surface and it's safe to go and get that when the owner isn't there, you know, because they can tell the difference between when we're there and we're watching and when we're not. So it means tidiness. I'm afraid it means never ever leave a room and leave the dog in the room with stuff that they could get, you know. And I've got, I mean, you've seen Twiggy's easily as tall as me. She could reach to the back of the work surfaces by 22 weeks, you know, without any effort. She just used to put her foot on and stretch her neck out, and nothing was safe. So every single time I left it, it went inside the microwave, or it went inside the oven, or it went up onto a higher shelf that I knew that she couldn't reach. And yeah, it's a little bit irritating to have to do that, but it pays dividends in the long run, because the dog starts to believe that there's never anything there because they keep checking. Dodo, on the other hand, some dogs I think are just more driven to try to make the world work for them. And he will check out the work surfaces every given opportunity. So I do have to be much more watchful with him, and I do know there's patterns. So it's more about me needing to be more organized and me getting on top of it more, rather than, you know, getting upset or angry with him. Now, if you do catch your dog in mid-action, yes, you can stop them. Yes, you can say no. Yes, you can follow through. But I always try to think, what's the effect in that moment? You know, if the dog gets scared of whatever we're doing, then that's not where I want my relationship to be. So if I'm shouting at them or reaching out towards them and they start ducking away and looking worried, then that's not where I want my relationship to be. So what can you do instead? Can you call them away from it? If you haven't prevented it, can you call them away from it to have a reward? Or could you make sure that the prizes, the sneaked prizes, if you like, the things that we want them to think that they kind of got away with and it's worth trying again, how's about we set them up so that those things are more likely to be available? So the cardboard box that sometimes has food hidden behind it when the dog comes back in from the back garden, without you setting it up and telling them, but it just happens to sometimes there's a sneaky surprise, and you set it up so that it's something that you're not actually going to be worried about. Yeah, so you can still, and people laugh because I do this. I do set them up with bits of old you know, cardboard boxes or rubbish or whatever, that I don't care if they rip it up. And whenever they've got hold of something, I run after them and I say, what you got? What you got? Kind of messing about, so that it becomes a game between us. And it has happened that on occasion it's been something I haven't want them to have. I give exactly the same cue, what you got, and they bring it over and they say, I've got this, and hand it over to me, because that is the game that we've practiced. They don't know the difference between something that you hold highly valuable and a bit of old rubbish unless you teach them that something's highly valuable to you and that you're going to get upset about it. Does that make sense? So if you want them to learn it's fun playing with the owner with toys, then you need to make those toys highly valuable by getting excited when the dog's getting hold of them. And, you know, that's when you kind of get involved and play a bit with them and run after them a little bit and kind of pretend you're going to grab at it. And we tend to get that wrong because we tend to do that only when it's really valuable to us. So we actually increase the value of that object to the dog and wanting to steal it because they get more attention. Anyway, what was the other one? When you're prepping food. Well, I love the when you're prepping food thing because that gives you a perfect opportunity to practice the settle. Okay, So you teach your puppy, when I've got food on the counter, there is going to be food being delivered onto the mat or the bed or whatever it is that you've set up in that kitchen area. You're going to just keep tossing it over your shoulder or dropping it down at your feet, depending on where it is in relation to where you are standing. And that doesn't have to be the food that you're chopping up, but to be honest, I do. You know, if I'm making something and it's something that's dog safe, I'm going to cut off bits. They love bits of carrot. When I'm prepping carrots, bits of carrot just fall off the work surface onto the floor. You know, so there's no point jumping up, because if you jump up, nothing happens. But if you keep down sniffing at the floor or laying down next to the human, you know, you hang around politely, then food falls off the counter. Does that make sense? So we don't have to make a big deal out of training. We're living with them 24/7. They're learning 24/7. What we do have to think about is always, if there's a behavior that is being maintained or is getting worse, it's because it's being reinforced. One way or another, it's being reinforced. It's being reinforced internally in the dog. So in other words, it makes them feel good because it's food or it's an achievement. You know, they've been trying to pull that bit of material off the sofa and it finally makes a ripping noise. It's achieved something. That's an internal reward for the dog, or and it's an external reward. So it's something that they wanted and they got access to, such as food or toys or food on the countertop. And if the dog is getting those reinforcers, that behavior is going to continue. So the one thing we can almost always change is access to those reinforcers. If they're not there, that behavior can't and won't be reinforced. Does that make sense? So that's about living with them. That's the 24/7, constantly thinking to myself, what could my dog get into? Do I want him to learn that? You know, if I want my dog to get excited about his own toys, I'm going to make sure they're available and I'm going to make sure they're highly rewarding. So food, toys that they have to do something with to get something out of, or something that their natural drive. You know, if you've got a dog that really likes to chase, then toys that move away from them. So things like the Whippet toys. So anyway, completely off track. So what we're talking about tonight, because you have to watch me with that, give me a subject and I'll just run with it. What we're talking about tonight is training. And I'm putting some of these up because, as I've just said, learning happens 24/7 when your dog's awake and then processing that learning when they're asleep, then they're learning. If we want a dog to be able to fit into our society, then there's certain rules and regulations that they have to abide by. They have to be able to be sensible around certain situations. And one of the things that most people will expect that your dog understands is a certain standard cues, and they will walk up to any strange dog in the street and expect that that dog will understand those certain standard cues. So standard cues that most people expect that every dog is going to just understand, almost as a tiny puppy, are sit and down and wait and stay and still or stand. So we're going to have a look at how you get those, and it might be that you think your puppy already has started to understand those, but we'll go from the basics anyway, and then it doesn't matter if you're doing it over. It's not going to do any harm. So what we need here, for most puppies, the easiest way to teach the cues for body positions is to show them the body position first, is to get them into that body position. And the old-fashioned method of that was to physically put them into that. So Barbara Woodhouse style would be to physically grab the back end and force it down so that the dog was in a sitting position. But we've got much further ahead than that now. We are We are the new men and women of the world. So we're going to use the law. We're going to use a food in the hand, and we're going to use it in the way that we practiced last week. So what you need to remember is the food is going to sit, ooh, get my hand in the right place, on that junction, and your thumb is going to go over the top of the food, and your hand is going to be sort of a bowl shape, so that we get the nose trying to get at the food, and it can taste the food and it can lick the food, but it can't take it until your thumb flicks out of the way. So that gives us really good timing. So if I just show you, we're going to start with the picture for sit first. And we just need a canine volunteer. Where's the other one? Go. There he is. Okay. So several volunteers are going to take a lure in the hand. There's a bit too close to the camera. Can you get off? Get off. Okay. Take a lure in the hand, attach it to your dog's nose, move your dog forward slightly, then bring the nose up and back slightly. It's a really tiny movement, this. We're going to be leading them forward, and then the hand literally does like a little semicircle. So we lead them forward, literally little semicircle. We're not taking the nose very high. So go forward, and the circle circles back towards them. And what happens, because the dog's balance, as you raise their head, that lower back feels uncomfortable, and that tends to make them want to drop their back end. Okay, so that's just because of the way that they're built. If that hand comes up slightly and back slightly, now I saw him, I don't know if you can see on camera, but he raised his feet just then. And the reason for that was, if my lure is too high, the dog is going to start wanting to reach up, which is cute if you want to train things like sit up or stand up. But if you're trying to train sit, you need to get your hand at exactly the right height. Okay, so I want you to do that. 5 pieces of food, no verbal cue at this point. I just want you to practice, get them into a sitting position, and make sure you let go of your food when they're in the right shape. So when their feet are on the floor and when their bum is on the floor. Face your palm towards the dog. So, Nikki, I've just noticed you're holding your food. I'll just show you. You're holding your food this way up. Yeah. What I want is your hand to be kind of underneath the chin, so that the palm, can I get him in the right place so you can see? My palm is facing his nose. Yeah? If it feels uncomfortable, it'll be because you've got it in the wrong hand, that's all. And then once you've got them on the nose, you can move that nose up and down, and you can come back towards the dog. Now, if your dog's just going backwards, what I want you to do, move them forward slightly, and then it's raising that nose up, so that the body of the dog, if you imagine your dog standing, we're taking that nose straight up 90 degrees and then slightly curving it backwards so that the dog's looking up in the air. Pull imagine yourself pulling the nose up like it's on a string. That's it. Fabulous. She says, oh no, but I'm doing sit now, so now I stay in a sit. If they're reluctant to move out of the sit, you can throw a piece of food away and make it make a pinging noise on the floor. Sometimes that works for most dogs. She's so laid back, it's hilarious. She says, yeah, no. Make sure she can really lick at that food, that she feels like she can really take it, and then sneak it away rather than rush it away. Make sure she's really hooked onto it before you start moving it. That's it. Nice. All right. So, when do we introduce a verbal cue? Well, we introduce a verbal cue when we're willing to bet quite a lot of money that if I put my hand into that position, your bottom will drop on the floor. We want the cue, we want them to hear the cue just before the bum bones hit the floor. Okay, so let's see if I can get this in a better position so you can see what I mean. Dodo will do it with me. So come over this side so they can see. We're on the law, and he's trying to offer me a sit because he knows what we're doing, which is no good for demos. I'm going to say sit just before those bum bones hit the floor. And then when his bum bones are on the floor and his feet are on the floor, that's when I'm going to let go of my food. Does that make sense? So if you think you're still having trouble getting them into the position, it's not time to start saying the cue. Does that make sense? If I get you to do it for me on camera just now, and I hear you say it, and then your dog doesn't do it, then I get to get stroppy and laugh at you. All right, so Claire's going first. I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself.
Shall I say it?
Yeah, no, it looks good. Looks very good. The two most important things with this are that you say the cue before the behavior and that you give that reward after the behavior. All right, so you're going to remember those tiny little gaps, because if everything kind of happens at the same time, the dog's not going to hear the cue. They're not going to put together their behavior with receiving the reward. Does that make sense? Nikki, are you ready? Should we have a look at you? You just unmute yourself. Okay. So Nikki, you're nearly there, aren't you? She's pretty good. Be careful about making sure that she's not sort of reluctant to do that sit. I think sometimes with dogs that are going to be tall, it's quite hard work for them, and it can become almost a negative experience doing the sit. Does that make sense? Because they've got a lot of growing, they can have quite a lot of growing pains. The smaller ones don't seem to have as much trouble, but Twiggy, when she was, I mean, she's a tall person. She looked very unhappy about doing sit when I was training her when she was a puppy. So I didn't used to push it. Don't do too many in a row, basically. That is a Twiggy drinking out of a water bowl. Thank you. Loud girl. Loud girl. Okay, so one thing we need to do quite quickly with this, with training any behavior on the law, is we need to get rid of the law. We need to get rid of the food in the hand. Okay, and the reason for that is that if you're not careful, your puppy can very quickly start to believe that when there isn't food there, it's not the same. Yeah, so we need to get rid of that food. And I would say now is as good a time as any. And what you do is you pretend it's there. So you still go into the treat pouch. You still have your hand in exactly the same position. Your hand already smells of the food anyway. You're going to make sure that you do exactly the same movements. You're going to give the same verbal cue. But when you get to the point at which you would normally have removed your thumb, instead of removing your thumb, what we're going to do is we're going to say, yes, really jolly, bright and smiley. And then we're going to bring a treat to that hand. So if you watch, what I don't want to do is I don't want to move my hand, my indicator hand, out of the way. So what we've got there is sit, waiting for his yes. And I'm going to bring his reward to the hand that took him into that position. Does that make sense? And do it again. So he's still getting rewarded. Sit. And I'm going to bring that reward to the hand. So the hand that showed him where to go is not leaving. Because if it leaves, what will tend to happen is the puppy will change out of position, and then you won't be able to reward that position because you've moved them, you've asked them to move by your body language. Does that make sense? You're going to give it a go. Go on, you can both do it at the same time. I'll trust that you're saying your verbal cues at the right time. You can do it without a verbal cue, but I would like you to get that marker word, that yes, in before you let go of the food. Okay, I saw you. Try not to swap hands. Try and bring that reward all the way to the lower hand. And Nikki, it looks like she might already be starting to think, if there isn't food there, then you don't do it. Yeah? And that can happen really, really quickly. All right. So the next thing we would do with that sit cue would be that we would start to what they call, once we've got that verbal cue starting to work, we would start to fade the hand signal. All right. And the way we do that, everybody's different. Every dog will go slightly differently, but you're going to, instead of taking the nose as if it were directly on the law, you're going to slightly change the hand signal so that it's almost a law, but not really. So there's a tiny little gap between the nose and the hand. And eventually you can change it to whatever you want to keep as your hand signal. Because I like to keep a verbal and a hand signal, because sometimes you can't give a verbal cue. Sometimes you're in the middle of conversation, or you're holding something in your mouth, or you're in the middle of eating something and it's going to come out as a muff noise. Yeah, so I'd like to keep both. But so we've got, instead of a full-on signal now with dough, it can just be a, you know, here's my, and it's still, if you look at it, it's still pretending, even though I haven't actually got something in my hand. He says, why have you got the law up there, and do I need to come up there to get it? Yeah? Okay. So, lots of different stages there to go through with the sit. Now we're going to talk about how to get the down. Remembering the first thing we need to do is show the dog the position. And again, the old-fashioned way was to just throw yourself at your dog and make them go down, force them into it. We don't do that no more. So we're going to use food again to help them. The easiest way I find for most dogs is to take them when they're already in the sit position. We're going to lure that nose on food down. Okay. Now, if you find some of the common issues with this is that the dog's bum keeps getting up, then you can make sure you reward more often for the sit to glue that bottom to the floor. And some dogs, the tall-legged dogs, and Twiggy's a really, really good example of this. Some of the tall-legged dogs, they can't do that position change. And I'll show you with Twiggy in a second because it's cute and it's stuck because we can't change it. So with Dodo, who's my baby dog exemplar, okay. First, we're going to ask for the sit. I'll come back here a bit so we can see you. There's the sit. I'm going to keep the nose on the lure. I'm going to very, very slowly bring that nose down between his front legs. And I'm going to pay on the floor. Okay, so on his nose, bring him down really slowly, keeping him in connection with that lure the whole way down. Making sure you can feel the licking inside your hand. So on the nose, all the way down. Yeah. So let's have a look and see how you get on with that. So from the sit, nice and patient. One thing that people do with this is they get a little bit upset because your puppy can't do it straight away. So you have to just wait. As long as the nose is still on the hand and the hand is slowly creeping towards the floor, most puppies will find their way there. Okay. All right, keep persisting. Just stay there. Yes, beautiful. Well done, Nikki. Nice persistence. That's good. Okay, so what I like to do with puppies, and when you start teaching the down, is it's a little bit of a sneaky dog trainer's trick. And some people can do it and some people can't, okay? So in my hand, I've got a dog's nose. Come on off you. In my hand, I've got 2 treats and 1 Dodo. 2 treats. So I'm going to ask for the sit and I'm going to deliver 1 treat, and I'm going to move my thumb so that 1 treat becomes available and I keep hold of the other. Now I've got the next lure ready to do the down with. All right, so it takes a little bit of work to be able to do that, but you can pay for your sit and then you can lure into the down and you don't have to interrupt that flow. And that helps the puppy to keep their bum stuck on the floor. Georgie is a clever puppy. Going, going, gone. It's quite hard work getting all those long legs down onto the ground, I think, Nikki. So anyway, I'll show you what Twiggy ends up doing because she's still quite funny with this. Right, you two go out though, because Dodo won't be able to stand. You wait there. Dodo out. Dodo, out. Good boy, go on. Go there. I'll see you in a minute. Okay, so what she's got. Come here, puppy. And sit and down. Did you see what she's got to do with the back end? Every single time. Okay, sit up, put you down. She says, I'll do it quick if there's a dodo in the room. Get out. Get out. Get out. Come on, out. Dodo thinks the whole world revolves around him. Okay, so, and it looks like both of you have got really good downs. So the only other dog trainer trick, which you haven't needed, but is a really good tip that I got a long time ago, I think it was Jane Donaldson. When you're luring your puppy down to begin with, your hand is this way, isn't it? It's underneath their nose, because you've just gone from you sit, and you've just started luring the nose down. As you're going down, start rotating that lure hand so that it eventually faces the ground. And what happens then is that the dog will, as they follow that treat down, they will try and follow the treat, they will rotate their head, and because they're rotating their head and going down, they're more likely to end up with the body on the ground. Does that make sense? Yeah? All right, so we have to do exactly the same. Hello, there's a twig. It's we have to do exactly the same with the food lure for the down as we've been doing for the sit. So we have to get rid of that food as quick as possible. But remember that with the down, once your hand is on the floor and you've said yes, because they're in the right position, keep it on the floor, bring that reward into that position on the floor. Yeah? So let's see if we can pretend there's food in that hand and get both positions. A sit, pay for the sit after you've done it. So you mark it with a yes. What are you doing? Good girl. Okay, so as soon as possible, don't get hooked into that food. Now, what tends to happen with humans, and I mean, I've suffered from it as well, is that you feel like your dog isn't going to do it without the food. And the fact is, if you keep going back to that food as a crutch, that will become true, because your dog won't know that it means the same thing if the food isn't there. So we want you to make sure that you're getting rid of that lure as soon as you can. We're still rewarding them. We're going to tell them when they've earned that reward with our marker word. We're always going to be rewarding them at some point. The only things that change into the future is that we might be expecting them to wait a little bit longer after the yes marker before the food arrives, or we might be expecting them to do several different behaviors before they get that marker and then the food is coming. Does that make sense? There's two different places that you can extend that time period. Okay, so how long do you practice when you're introducing these verbal cues that every dog should understand? Well, really, you don't need to practice an awful lot. 3 times a day, maximum training period for a puppy, about 5 minutes. So that's 15 minutes a day. Don't always train at the same time of the day. Don't always train in the same place, but do train one different behavior per training session. So 3 times of a day, 3 to 5 minutes, and you will find that your puppy works and learns really, really well. What we tend to do as humans is we tend to earmark a particular time like you are coming to see me, which, you know, we can't avoid, but you'll earmark a particular time that's your dog training time. And what you've got to be aware of if you're doing that is that everything else in the environment is a cue for the dog that is now a training session. And that does not translate into all of the other times of day and all of the other places that you want the dog to know that. So it's better to think to yourself, oh, I'll just do a 3-minute session randomly through the course of the day, but not to overdo it. The other thing that we tend to do, because we're human, is the dog will be doing really, really well and we'll get all excited and we'll keep going and we'll keep going, we'll keep going until they're tired or until they're full. And then it becomes more of a negative experience for the dog, because when we start nagging, what we actually want is a training session to finish when they're having the best time, when they're doing their best, because we want them then to be excited to come back and do it again. You know, when the next time you say that word, I'm there. I want to be on it with you. Okay, so the subject of different environments. The amount of times I will see dogs who are perfect at home, and the owners will say it, and I absolutely believe them, because it's absolutely true. What you've got to remember is where you practice will be where your dog gets good at it. So if you don't practice in different situations and different environments, then they're never going to understand that it means the same thing in those environments. On top of which, you've got to be really aware that in some situations, it's just not going to be possible for your puppy to focus. You know, if they're worried or something in the environment is too exciting or too different and it's taking all of their attention away, they're not going to be able to focus on you. So we expect that it's going to be harder when you go out of the house and you start training out of the house. We should expect that the puppy needs more reinforcement, more reassurance, more assistance to get it right. We would expect that the behavior is not going to be as sparkly as it is when you're at home in the easy environment. Yeah, does that make sense? But we don't not practice it because it's hard, because that's where, you know, if you don't practice, you don't get a good dog. Right, so it's looking like you're doing really well. We're going to have a quick look at weight, which I think is a massive thing for dogs, because it doesn't make sense to a dog to wait when there's food in the hand or on offer or on the work surface. Oh no, not the curtains again. Ah! She's run off. She did this last week as well, it was funny. Oh, I'll wait till she comes back. Hello, you monkey. Hello, you monkey. Put your paws up. Come on. Oh, you're near the table. Come here. You're cute. I can't see you there. Come on, put your paws up. Pose. Twiggy, pose. Yes, pose. Come on. Put your paws up. She's back up. Oh yeah, there we go. Put your chin on. All right, so the way we're going to do this, some puppies need more than others, so some puppies need more assistance. If your puppy doesn't understand and they're not getting, you know, the concept of waiting, then what you might need to do is to put a hand on the collar. All right, and the hand on the collar is just to prevent them from getting it wrong. What I want you to do is show them that you've got a piece of food, tell them wait. Yes, and that split second that they hold their nose back is when we're going to deliver that piece of food. So we've got here, wait. Now, she thinks, that's it, good girl. What she was going to do then was what we call the sustained hand touch. So she got stuck. Come around here. You've got a slightly better view. So there's the food in the hand, wait. Twiggy, wait. And she's offering me a different behaviour that we've trained, which is a sustained hand touch. Wait. Yes, good girl. All right, once they're able to do it in the hand, can't see that, I'll just move the camera slightly. Once they're able to do it in the hand, have a bowl or something that you've got control over, that they can't take it, and you're going to say wait, and if they control themselves or hold themselves back from it, then you're going to give them a piece of food from that bowl. Wait. So I quite like starting with this on a coffee table or a table, or you know, the sofa's quite a good height where you're able to keep control over that object. If you have it in your hands, make that a later stage, because that's kind of difficult for dogs. They kind of think that they can jump in and just grab from the hand. Once you've got it into a bowl, and you can cover the bowl if the puppy starts to go towards it. Yeah, and they can start to learn. Wait means don't go after it straight away. We don't need to get angry or upset or growly with them about it. It just is a fact of life. Wait. Good girl. Just cover it or remove it if your puppy can't do it. And if your puppy's one of these that gets really super excited when there's food around, like Dodo does, what you might need to do, as I say, to begin with, is just have a little finger in the collar so that they can't move towards it and get it wrong. Wait. Good girl. And what we're going to do with that eventually is we can build up that behaviour of waiting. Put your chin on there. Put your chin on and wait. And we can introduce it to teach all sorts of husbandry type behaviours, or being sensible when your dinner is served. So here Twiggy's doing a little bit of wait with a chin rest, which she's just repositioned. She's waiting with the chin rest, and then I could use that position to start to teach her to let me examine and touch and pretend to give injections before she can get that reward. Okay, so there's a chin rest, wait. Good girl. That's a good girl. Very good. Okay. So, how are you getting on? Thumbs up if you've managed to see your dog make the choice to just wait for a second. Beautiful. All right, let's get some feedback about today's class. Let me know. I want basically to make sure that you've understood everything. So go with Nikki first.
Hold on. Do I need to? Oh no, I'm unmuted. Yeah, no, it's really good because it's stuff that we could work on going forward now. And I think she can sit when she wants to, but she's definitely a if she wants to type, I think. But no, it gives me a lot more pointers, of, certainly with the law and getting the angles right for doing it. No, you can't go that way. So yeah, no, it's been really good. You're too clever, aren't you?
She's clever. She's a very clever dog. And I always think the clever ones are harder to live with, especially when they're going to be big.
Yeah.
You know? So, what I would say about that, doing it only when you want to. Dogs, and the word that comes to mind is stubborn, but dogs are not able to be stubborn in the way that we use that term. We use that term to mean that they make a conscious decision not to do something in order to irritate or upset, or, you know, all sorts of different connotations that we use it for, meaning when a person is acting that way. What I want you to do is drop the idea that your dog is ever doing anything with you in mind. They don't have that part of the brain that allows them to imagine what's going on in your mind. They don't do anything to affect how you feel. Does that make sense? Unconsciously, yes, absolutely they do. In real terms, they'll do things that upset you, or they'll do things that make you smile and make you happy, but they're not considering it before they do that action. So a dog who is refusing to do something, or refusing to do whatever it is for their own very, very good reasons, and the reasons can be just as many as they would be for us. You know, perhaps we're a bit too tired right now, perhaps we're not hungry for food, so food isn't a reward, or we're not hungry for that type of food right now. Maybe we need a different type of food. Maybe we are feeling uncomfortable in our stomachs, you know, we're feeling poorly, we're feeling just like we don't want to train right now. Maybe it's your dog's sleep time and you're asking them to get up and work. So what I want you to think about is, can I make it more valuable to the dog to do whatever it is that I've asked? Can I make it worth their while, if you like? So keep in mind, if I asked you to do a 40-hour week for me, working at the vets with me, cleaning up and sweeping, and I offered you a £5 for it, most people would say no for that. Do you know what? I have had some people that have absolutely snapped my hand off and said yes, because the motivation for them would be just being there in that environment. Yeah. But most people, for a £5 for 40 hours, they're going to say no, aren't they? But if you offer them 500 quid for 40 hours, there's a good chance they might say yes, especially if it's cash in hand rather than wages. Yeah. So think about, what's the motivation to the dog, and are there other reasons why the dog might not be up to that we're asking them to do? You know, is the environment too difficult, too busy, too distracting? Are they too tired? You know, they have emotions and needs and wants just like we do, so they do have good other motivations. All right then, Claire.
Yeah, she did really well. When you said we was going to get her to wait, I thought she's got no chance of doing that because she is the greediest dog I've ever known. But she did amazing. I can't believe it. I was really, really shocked that she did it.
She's just looked over and she's just said, why aren't we still training? She just looked directly at me, at you from behind you while you were talking to me, and she stood there going, what are we doing? Like this. Anyway, Sammy girl, cause, you know, it'd be daft to have you there and not doing anything at all. So again, we're just going to unmute you and have you say something. I don't even care what you say.
Well, for the first time, come here, Amy. Maggie. Yeah, come here. I brought the old girl in as well. Come on, go find it. Sorry. That was because Warwick's about upstairs. They're back again now. I think you two are doing absolutely brilliantly, and you look so good as they're doing it. You're looking really good, doing really well. A lot better than I did when I started, I've got to be honest. But yeah, you're doing really well. Yeah.
Now, I have to say, Sammy she's a very self-effacing human being, and I don't remember her doing badly at all, except that Autie was a little bit fearful as a puppy, and she had quite a lot of catching up to do with getting him to feel comfortable in the training environment before he was able to start learning. And that is not because Sammy wasn't good at training, it was because Autie wasn't in the condition to be able to do it. So, and imagine though, Sammy, if you'd have gone to a dog trainer who'd said to you, make your dog do it. Can you imagine what condition he'd be in now? No, we're not doing that. Anyway, so that's us, I think, unless anybody's got any questions. If you've got a question and you need me to talk about something, let's have the standard hand wave. And otherwise, if you're happy, we'll say good night. All right, and I'll get your videos to you as soon as I can. Have you been, just thumbs up, have you been able to get into the YouTube videos okay? Yes, brilliant. Okay, thank you very much. And I will post it on your WhatsApp group. Right, bye.